Today's video is brought to you by Storyblocks. Jeez, I'm crow. White balance. It's one setting on your camera that is extremely important to understand. Whether you're working with just natural lighting or bringing in additional lighting, regardless of which, understanding how to properly adjust your camera's white balance is crucial. But before we get into the topic of white balance, my name is Brady and welcome back to the classroom, a place where we procrastinate from doing our chores to learn fun things about fun stuff. If you find any of this video or any of the other videos on this channel helpful or educational or entertaining, please hit the subscribe button, the share button, the like button, and it'll help me out a lot. So moving into the topic of white balance, well, what is white balance? Some of you may not know. So put pretty simply, white balance is a way for you to communicate with your camera of what is true white, or what is really warm, or what is really cool. Your camera is not as intuitive as we are. We're able to just look at a light source and say, hey, we know that is tungsten, that's really warm, or we know that's a really cool light source, so we automatically adjust to it. The camera cannot, and although some cameras do have auto white balance, or most cameras do have auto white balance, it's still the camera just taking an educated guess based off of the entire scene. So sometimes it's spot on and it gets it right, other times it's not. So today we're going to learn how to use white balance to our advantage to make the absolute most of your footage. Let's take a brief moment to just talk about different lights and their different color temperatures. Well, we measure the color temperature of light in Kelvin units. On average, most lights range about 2000, being very warm, 2000 Kelvin units, all the way up to say 10,000 Kelvin units, and that's going to be on the very cool side of things. So on average, lighting is going to fall somewhere between that 2000 to 10,000 Kelvin range. Once more, 2000 being very warm, 10,000 being very cool. So household example, you've got a light bulb. Well, light bulbs in a house are usually pretty warm. Am I right? So that's probably going to fall on the warmer, lower number end of that Kelvin scale. Actually, about 2700 Kelvin is where a light bulb would sit. But say you've got another example, one of those like crisp, clean white LEDs. Those are going to be on the cooler end of the spectrum. So 5, 6, 7, 8,000 Kelvin is going to be a lot of a cooler light source. So that covers a little bit of what we need to know about lights and their color temperature. But how do we translate that to our camera? Now, in order to make a light source appear true white, you need to adjust your camera's white balance to be that of the Kelvin temperature of the light source itself. So, example, if your light source is 5,000 Kelvin, here I have a light, 5,000 Kelvin. I would need to adjust my camera's white balance to be 5,000, and this will appear true white. Now, if you adjust the light source down to say 3,200 Kelvin, this light source is going to now appear very warm because the camera thinks that 5,000 is true white. So anything warmer or lower on that spectrum than 5,000 is going to appear warm. So in order to make this light source now true white once more, you're going to bring the camera's white balance to 3,200 Kelvin to match up the temperature of this light. So now this is going to be true white, and anything around that light source is going to be even cooler than it once was before. But now, say your camera's set to 3,200 white balance and you bring this all the way up to 6,500. Now this is extremely blue and very cool, as is the rest of the scene. Now let's apply this to actually some practical real life examples rather than just playing around with an Aputure MC here. And let's start with just natural daylight. And natural daylight is typically right around 5,600 Kelvin. Now, before we get into this example, as with all the examples, I shot in RAW, so I am able to adjust the white balance in post to make these examples just a little bit easier for all of us to understand. Now, the shot that we're looking at here is just all natural daylight shot at about midday. So we're gonna stick to right around 5,600 Kelvin as our reference point. So I'm gonna adjust my camera's white balance to be 5,600 as well, and everything begins to be pretty true white and appear true white. Now, say we wanna get a little bit creative. Say we want to warm things up and get more of a sunset look to it. Well, I'm going to bring my white balance on my camera up to 6,500. So now by doing so, I know it gets confusing with the backwards numbers on the camera. It took me a while to understand. But by telling your camera that 6,500 is now true white, now anything on the lower end of that spectrum down to 5,000, 4,000, 3,2, so on and so forth, that's going to appear even warmer than it once was. So now by adjusting your camera's white balance to 6,500 rather than 5,600, it's going to appear just a little bit warmer, and you're going to start to get this warmer sunsetty look. And then if you want to go for a wintry look or cool it down in any direction, you're going to take that white balance, instead of on your camera up to 6500, maybe bring it down to 3500. Now I want to point out that white balance isn't always meant to be exactly that of the light source. It's kind of a reference point to get true white, and then you can stylize that and use a creative choice and make a creative decision to alter that white balance, whether you want to warm up a scene or cool down a scene. So that's for natural lighting. But what if we're bringing in additional lighting, or bringing in additional lighting with different color temperatures, say one warm light and one cool light? How do we go about setting our white balance for that? Well, I want to talk about it, but before we do, I want to take a second to talk about our sponsor for the day, which is Storyblocks. Not only does Storyblocks have an insane selection of stock footage that really fits into any project that comes your way, but you also get the option of unlimited downloads at a very affordable rate for creators. They make it very easy to customize your search terms and find exactly what you need. And that doesn't just stop at stock footage. There are so many options of great transitions, visual effects, and even title templates for fast and unique text options. Plenty of ways to add some spice to your projects, whether it's visual or even audio with sound design and even music. And I'm going to leave a link down below in the description for you guys to check them out. But let's get back to today's episode. So I set up this quick fire scene, one, because I wanted to have a fire, it was a great night, but two, because I thought it'd be a great way to make an example of setting your white balance for two different light sources. So I set this up with two different lights. One was a 2700 Kelvin warm light motivated by the fire that I had on Sarah. And then in the background to light up the trees, since it was a cool night and dark, but I still had to bring up some of the lighting on the trees, I had that at 5600 Kelvin. So we want a cool light and a warm light. Where do we put our white balance? Before adjusting your settings, it's really important to ask yourself, how do I want this to feel? Do I want it to be warm? Is that the intention, warm all around? Do I want some kind of in-between with a cool night and a warm fire? Do I want everything to be cool? So ask yourself how you want your particular scene to look before approaching your white balance. For me, I wanted this scene to look warm around the fire and the surrounding area around the fire, but then in the background, I still wanted to keep that cool night feeling to it. So I knew that my white balance would probably be somewhere in between those two light sources. So before we show where I would set it, let's show where I would not set my white balance. So first, I would not set my white balance to 2700 Kelvin, because that tells my camera that anything 2700 Kelvin is going to be white, and a fire is probably around 2000 to 2800 Kelvin temperature. So that's telling my camera that the fire is white, and anything cooler than the fire is going to be whiter or bluer. So with my white balance so low and cool, it's not going to give the look that I want. But now if I bring the white balance in my camera to match the other light in the background at 5600, that means that that light's going to be pretty white and everything else is going to be extremely warm. The fire is going to be crazy orange, too orange. You're not going to get this color contrast that we're going for. So I settled right around 3400 white balance, and that really gave that separation and placed a nice spot in between to leave the fire still warm and warm enough to give off that warm feeling, but it still left a lot of room for the trees in the background with that other light to remain cool. And to circle back around, there really is no right way to set your white balance, or I guess the right way, if there was one, would be to ask yourself again, how do you want it to look? Do you want the scene to be pure white? Do you want the scene to be warm? Do you want the scene to be cool? So asking yourself how you want your creative choice to look is probably the right way to set your white balance. I hope that these examples do help with clarifying any questions that you have when it comes to white balance. The best thing to do is to just go out and try things. Whether you have lights that you can adjust the color temperature on and play around with your camera's white balance, or if you don't have lights, just go out in natural daylight at different times of day, whether it's midday, sunset, late at night, and just get a bunch of trial and error shots and go back to your computer and say, okay, this was my white balance, this is how it turned out, this is my white balance, that's how it turned out. It's all about trial and error and finding out how settings affect your image. But that is all that I have for you guys today. I hope that you found this video educational, entertaining, interesting, whatever it is. Please hit that share button, the subscribe button, like button, subscribe button. I'm talking too fast. That's all I've got for you guys today. So I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening, your week, your day, your morning, so on and so forth. Class dismissed. That's all. That's all I got for you guys today. So see you later.